Hi there. Thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Taste with Sherry, where we're saving the earth one flavor at a time by gathering community to share wisdom around the natural connections between our innate sense of taste and flavors that are grown in healthy, regenerative soils. Welcome.
Hi, people. I'm Dia, and I can't smell. Do you care about that? You should, because I can taste. And I'm here talking with the one and only Sherry Hess of the one and only show, Let's Talk Taste with Sherry, because she wants to know what my experience is like as a person who can't smell but can taste. So let's take it away. Sherry Hess, everyone.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have you here, Dia. It's such perfect timing. Yesterday, Ron and I recorded an episode and we talked about the categories of flavor. And he says to me, so why do the categories of flavor matter? And I'm like, really? and
Ron,
he knows you, right? So, and he knows that you're a congenital anosmic. And I said, Dia can still taste. These categories of flavor are something that people without smell can taste. It's still an experience, even though you're not having the same experience as someone that has their sense of smell, right? So ever since I've met you, I seriously feel like you justify my existence in this message, because just from stories that I've heard from you, and I can't wait for you to just share more, but you kind of just demonstrate this beautiful you bring an awareness to our sense of taste is really what you do. You bring such a deep awareness, because I've watched you in videos have these tasting competitions where you can identify food more accurately than people that have a sense of smell, right?
Yeah,
so
it's crazy.
Tell us your story and tell us, we're going to get to this connection around COVID, right? Because this is something that we're experiencing, or that, a lot of people are going through. So tell me your thoughts on these things.
Do you want my story?
Yes, please tell me a story.
Okay, this is my congenital anosmia story. This is how I figured out I was different than everyone else.
Awesome.
I was 4 years old, and I remember this very clearly. 4 years old, walking into my house with my father and brother, and as soon as they opened the front door, they both breathed in and exclaimed, "Spaghetti for dinner!" And I could not understand what they meant, how they did that, how they knew, because you could not see the kitchen from the front door. And I turned to my father and said, "How do you know we're having spaghetti for dinner?" And he said, "Just breathe in through your nose and smell." And that directive, that insanely unhelpful directive, was placed my way for my entire childhood, with the subtext of just try. You're just not paying attention. You'll grow into it. And I was adamant that I could not smell. I didn't understand what smell was. All I could take in was warm or cold air. But here's the kicker, and this is why everyone was so mansplaining to me my whole childhood, which I do not sit with mansplaining. They would tell me, well, if you can taste, which I can, you have to be smelling. So if you taste, you can smell, you're just not noticing it.
Such a common assumption, isn't it? Everybody assumes that and it's not that they're not affiliated, but one does not define the other, right?
Exactly. And the parallel I like to bring into this, just to add some gut punch to it, is to say, if you had a blind child, deaf child, would you say to that kid, "Oh, well, just look through your eyes and see. You're just not paying attention. You'll grow into it."
Oh, right?
No one does that, because we believe them.
And I talk about, this relevance of our of blindness and deafness, right? When you think about our senses in general as tools that we trust, I always talk about, it's so easy for people to trust their vision and their sound, right? All their other senses, like they're all so trustworthy. But when it comes to our sense of taste, like the reverence is completely lost. We don't really care as long as it tastes good, right? And the definition of tasting good
That's
is completely
huge.
different for every person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I love about what you do and how you experience food is that you can pick up on nuances, right? And you have this awareness that is so deep around these categories of flavor, and the rest of us are just walking around eating a Dorito thinking it tastes like cheese, right? And for you, that experience is completely different, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely different. And obviously, I've never relied on my sense of smell because I've never had it. And I've never relied on the false assumption that science put forth, and they're recently stepping back on, that there's only 5 tastes that I can experience. I've always moved forward and paid attention to the holistic experience of tasting, of eating.
Mm.
And my definition of that and my experience of that has helped create this really deep awareness that, as you so rightly pointed out, so many people have zero attention span or care to even experience. They're just moving forth without paying attention. And I pay attention.
Yeah. And it's so huge. And it brings us awareness to how much we are just kind of blowing it off, right? As this unimportant thing. And what we're missing, because those of us that can smell, there's almost like this disadvantage because we do get this sensation when we're eating these, manufactured flavors that are really directed to our sense of smell, right? We don't even, because we're making that complete assumption and we're just letting it be like this quick eating experience, because we can smell all of the manufactured flavors on the Dorito, right? And we can be like, oh, I know that smell. And we're not consciously thinking this, but the smell is, the tomato, the pepper, the onion, the garlic, whatever. And for you, that experience, like, so we're eating it, we're thinking, oh, it's got all these great flavors, but there's no flavor to it. It's completely your sense of smell, right? Because
Yes.
what is your experience when you eat manufactured flavors that are directly, the ones that are just geared towards your sense of smell, like a Dorito? I mean,
That's a great, like Doritos, a great example. Manufactured flavors, those natural flavors, all those additives are total BS. That is your, as you rightly pointed out, smell plus taste, flavor. That's your sense of smell adding to the taste, and you're letting the smell override what you're actually tasting, which for the most part are like super sharp tastes or very bland tastes. And you're relying on your smell of these unnatural, these chemical flavors to perceive what you should be tasting, which you are not.
yes, yes, yes. And there's this dangerous almost correlation, right, between the two for us, for those of us that can smell, because we're not taught how to distinguish between those two things, right? We're just
Absolutely.
like, and like a lot of what I talk about in the show is, we've the past decades of my lifetime, so much has changed in food, right? And food has been grown differently, and our soils are being depleted. And in the process of depleting our soils, there's no more flavor in our food. But at the same time that we're figuring out there's no more flavor in this scientifically created food that we have, there's this rise in flavor creation, right?
Yeah.
Because we as humans choose flavor, right? We always choose flavor. I always talk about, like, how diets fail because you always choose flavor, and all the diet trends want to make things salty and sweet just so they appeal to you, right? Whereas there's so much more appeal in variety of flavors instead of making everything taste salty and sweet. But this kind of perfect storm of what's happening with food, just brings me to this place where I'm like, well, why aren't we really paying attention, right? To food and the flavor experience. So for me, when I talk about, and I want to hear more than 5 categories too, because I've heard a couple things too, and I try to keep it simple and just stick to 5. But, this, if we could just create more of an awareness, more of what you have when you eat, right? I almost want to tell people to just pinch your nose when you eat, and then you'll be able to pick up on these categories, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. You're saying it so beautifully. No wonder you're saving the world one flavor at a time. Magnificent, Sherry.
You know, I try.
But it's absolutely true. And one of the ways that I help people understand, if they're willing to understand and they want to take extra steps to figure this out, to get more in touch with their sense of taste, is to go paleo, is to cut out, to do an elimination diet, to cut out processed foods, to only eat foods that are whole and natural that you have made. Because when you do that and you start eliminating the sugar and the natural flavors and the salt and all of the coverings, the masks that corporations, conglomerates put on our foods, you will start understanding what pure taste is more about. Because this further sensation of what the world has been told is delicious food, so much of it is manufactured and so much of it is fake, because the real natural foods have such shitty taste to them because, as you said, everything's been depleted. So they have to make it up to get you interested in eating it.
So what do you do when like if you're on this paleo diet, right? And you're eating healthy and you come across a vegetable that is supposed to taste like broccoli, but it doesn't taste really strong. You know, it doesn't have that intense flavor. How do you make your food taste better?
I put, well, my own sea salt, Celtic sea salt or Himalayan. I put salt, ghee, olive oil, pepper, za'atar. I put strong spices, cinnamon, things that are not herby, because herbs are not really a big deal for anosmics. That's definitely a sensorial issue. But all these sorts of peppers, you know, spicy red peppers, just ways to create depth of flavor profiles. Maybe a sweet coconut amino that's salty and sweet to put on that broccoli.
Right.
But the understanding of what broccoli tastes like,
Right.
just broccoli, is a huge lesson in and of itself. And the food that I most go to for this lesson are eggs, straight up eggs.
Interesting.
Because
so you can taste a difference in eggs. Is that what you're saying?
oh my God. So eggs have become one of the most bastardized foods in our food chain. The production, mass production of eggs from these gigantic Holocaust chicken plants that are, they're just awful situations for these animals. And the lack of good food and the stress and the confinement and the drugs, the hormones that they're being fed and injected with produces one of the most nutrient lacking, tasteless foods you can imagine. Because if you go out and get a farm fresh egg from a farmer who's let that chicken be pasture raised, who's feeding it really good food, the chicken's not under any stress, not only visually will it look 100,000,000% different. The pasture egg will have a tall, dark, orange yellow yolk. The white, the albumin will be tight and not runny. It'll be this like a nice big boob. Like, hey, I'm standing up and saying hi. It's a nice looking egg.
Right,
and the ones you get from Lucerne, you crack it open and it's pale. The albumin is watery. It goes everywhere. And when you eat it, there's no yolk flavor. There's no depth to it. It's water. And you eat that pasture egg and you can feel the texture. You can taste the density of that yolk and the firmness of the albumin. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what an egg is supposed to taste like. I don't need anything on it. That's what egg is.
Oh, I love it. I so love it. And I was going, you actually answered a question for me before I even had a chance to ask it, because I was going to ask if you could taste the comparison to, like we always talk about the grocery store tomato versus the backyard tomato, right? But you just painted that whole story in an egg. And it's the same thing, right? And
it's the same thing.
And you're so focused on flavor and able to detect and know that there's a huge difference between these two, right? Whereas the rest of us are just walking around looking at the price tag on the eggs and just buying it because it's called an egg, right? And this is part of it. And this is what I love about having you on the show, is because I almost think, when it comes to this language that I'm trying to create with people to really tune into their sense of taste, to really use their sense of taste as a way of detecting nutrition, I seriously think I need to buy them all nose plugs, because you get to sense that depth in your taste alone, right? And I love that you talked about like the egg is more nutritious, right? Because this is a conversation that we're not having. A tomato is a tomato is a tomato, an egg is an egg is an egg. And everybody just wants to say, well, I'm eating eggs, so I'm eating healthier. I'm eating tomatoes. They don't taste good, but I'm eating healthy, right? So this whole idea of the correlation between flavor and nutrients, that's what I want to bring to this show, right? I want to bring this like obviousness that there is a correlation, right? And it's just, I love it. I so love talking to you about this because you don't have that handicap that we have. I know that's the complete reverse of how everybody's telling you it is, but
I love it. Yes.
It's really, really, fascinating to me. And so let's kind of take this into the whole COVID thing, right? Into this conversation of, and I've actually reached out to people who had COVID just to ask them some questions and kind of get the feel for things. And I try to explain it the way you and I would explain it, right? Like, it's not really your sense of taste, it's your sense of smell that you're missing. And people just like,
they can't hear you. They can't hear you, Sherry.
There's no separation there, right? And it's like, I'll just keep talking. I'll just keep talking, Dia. You keep talking with me. We'll just keep talking until they finally hear us, because it's huge. And we've just let these two senses be, kind of.
Science has done us a huge disfavor by falsely putting forth bad science, honestly. But whatever. I guess it's the best science.
It's unfunded yet science. Yeah. It doesn't have a priority.
No. Oh my God. Nobody gave.
But does it now? Does it now with COVID?
Okay, so here's what has priority. The acquired anosmics, and because that's a separate conversation than the congenital anosmic, the actual congenital anosmic.
And explain the difference between those two. Just explain a quick difference between those two.
So congenital means being born with. So when you're born without the sense of smell, most of us congenitals have the ability to taste. To varying degrees, depends on your life experience. And also depends on why you're congenital. So most congenitals have no idea why they're congenital, if it's genetic, if it's DNA, if it's just an abnormality in them, if they hit their head as a baby and they just never remember smelling, right? Doctors have been very uninterested and quite frankly lazy in their interest in finding out, helping, and trying to come up with solutions or aids to the congenitals. But acquired anosmics, they get all the glory, all the science, all the journalists, all the attention, every conversation, which is why I love being so vocal. Every conversation centers around the experience of being an acquired anosmic, someone who acquires anosmia through some act in life, cold, head injury, virus, childbirth, accident, brain tumor, whatever it is, that's acquired anosmia. Someone who's lost the ability to smell is an acquired.
Right. So they know they've had the experience of combining their sense of smell with their sense of taste for a portion of their life. And now all of a sudden it's a new story, right?
Yeah. And they don't know how to move with that new experience, because what they get is a door slammed in their face. Right. They're experiencing an incredibly profound, jarring loss.
It's a trauma, right? Yeah.
It's a trauma
thing happening.
And they sit in that trauma. And that's the problem with trauma, is when you sit in it and become obsessed with the effects of the trauma, you're in a really dangerous cycle. And so many acquired anosmics are in this cycle of depression, of sadness, of less than. Because they're not.
And this is COVID too, right?
This is so COVID.
Yeah, because there's even more on top of it. I mean, there's so much trauma around COVID in general. And then you also have this, what you're hoping is temporary, but there's always.
Yeah, if you want to compare this, let's compare this to polio, okay? Right? Polio is a virus that was massively detrimental to populations around the world. And the effect of polio was the loss of the ability to walk because it affected the nerve system. And you had people that recovered from polio with a limp. You had people that recovered from polio perfectly normal. And then you had people that spent the rest of their lives maybe in an iron lung or with leg braces and crutches. And those people had the opportunity to live in that spiral of depression because one of their senses, their ability to walk, was taken away.
Right.
And other people just took it on as like, this is the thing. And now I'm permanently affected. And now I have to learn new pathways to maneuver in life. And the acquired anosmics, it's really hard for them to acquire the new pathways to move in life and to understand that perhaps their taste isn't gone.
Exactly.
It's just
and
their perception.
Yes. And that's where, like, again, another reason why I'm so excited to have you here is because I feel like you can bring this ray of hope, right? Like, to people that are experiencing this, because it's not as much of a loss as they think it is. So before we go down there, I want to ask you one quick question. In your opinion, and maybe you know this as a fact, are they losing their sense of taste or are they losing their sense of smell?
Here's where science is letting us down and hopefully stepping up. No one can say that, right? So if you smelled something and you go, that smells gross, and well, not me, and Ron smelled it and he goes, that smells good. That's your life perception that affects your ability to smell. So science isn't taking into consideration life perception. So if somebody says, I have lost my sense of smell and now I can't taste, science is taking that statement at face value.
Right. That totally makes sense. Oh my God.
And it's like, what face value does that mean?
Right.
You know? And they go, oh, all I can taste is bitter and salty and sweet
That's
and sour and
That's
umami.
taste.
And I'm like, oh. Yep.
Right. Yes. Wow.
And so science isn't tackling that question. Science is tackling, how do we help them regain their sense of smell?
Right.
How do we help support them in this time of depression and trauma, and teach them new ways to maneuver in life so they can see that walking with crutches is not that big of a deal. So you walk with crutches.
Right. So it's interesting because, like, I kind of want you to elaborate on how you experience flavor and how you create how you can detect these nuances, right? And I want to have that conversation, but it's hard because, like, you can't tell an acquired anosmic how to do this because it's just what you've always done, right?
Right.
But I still think there's got to be a thread of commonality there that can help them, right?
Yes. And I think what you have done with your thought and research and promotion of this idea of taste and flavor, I think what you've done is open up this other world. You've turned the page to allow a bigger conversation about taste, because taste is half a paragraph on a page of conversation. There's just not a lot to say about it. And there's no vocabulary to support it. So when I taste and I describe my taste, what I found, what you enlightened me to, were the further dialogues, the further categories of being able to express what it is I am tasting, and talking about the elements.
Yes.
There's so much of that involved in taste. When you started talking about that to me, my mind was blown, because that was exactly the conversation that's missing in how to talk about taste and flavor. All the people do is talk about the 5 flavors. And it's like, this, no. No, it's so much more than that. Clay is a flavor. Fire is a flavor. The coolness of the water is a flavor.
Yeah.
And being able to convey that to the acquired anosmics honestly just requires them to be open.
Right.
And want to learn, because right now the only help they get, their training, is called smell training, where you take vials of like peppermint, orange, cinnamon, I don't know, whatever strong flavors that you have, and you spend 30 seconds, I think, on each smell. And you remember, you tell your head, I am smelling peppermint. Peppermint's not a good one because that's a trigeminal.
You can sense that, right?
That's a trigeminal nerve. But, whatever, cinnamon, I'm smelling cinnamon. I'm smelling cinnamon. And it's this repetition of smell and memory that you're trying to retrain those nerves to make the pathways again. That's it. That's
That
what
seems so like cavemanish.
right? Where it's like, let's just eat and experience the food resting on our tongue and swishing it around our mouth and understanding plain food and sucking the water out of the food and how that has a taste and a flavor, not just the food, but the elements around it.
Yes. Yes. And that's, something I haven't even really gone into depth on, but it's true. It's like there's so much more to the sensations that are going on in your mouth when you're experiencing flavor, right? So, I'm trying to think like I definitely want to send people to like the link of you guys having like one of whatever your favorite food identification videos is, because first of all, you're hilarious. And second of all, like you always win. I just like blew the whole.
I'm doing, you know what? I'll give you sneak preview. You've got the they got the insider point of view right now. I'm doing one tonight.
Oh, you are?
I am. I'm doing one tonight, and here's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The why is because Anosmia Awareness Day is February 27th, next Saturday. So I'm creating a taste test for next Saturday.
Nice.
What I am doing with my intrepid partner, Mark, who's always up for a good taste test and a smell. He likes to smell things for me.
Yeah.
And other stuff. But the taste test we're doing tonight, I have always wanted to do it on the milks.
Ah,
Oats,
interesting.
almond, cashew, coconut, hemp. Because those generally get put into things.
Right.
And I've always had these thoughts about, are they really that flavorful? Like, what are the tastes that I would describe to and prescribe to these milks? And I'm really excited to do this milk taste test, which
that's awesome.
I know I'm going to win.
Yeah.
But the ones that I've done in the past, the ones that I find the most interesting for me is first the durian fruit.
I remember that was
the world's stinkiest food. And I do this taste test. This isn't a competition. This is more of like a dare.
Right.
I do it with a super smeller.
I've watched that episode.
So that awesome. One is crazy hilarious to watch him really like, where I'm just like, it's good. Tastes like mango. That one's really, really fun. And then the other stinky food is surströmming, which is fermented herring from Sweden, from the Netherlands, which is like putrid from the moment you puncture the can.
Right.
And watching Mark have to deal with the stench, and it's
really funny.
It's really fun. So that's not really so much a competition as it is just showing you how I enjoy flavor and taste.
Right. And they're just so informative and funny, of course, and entertaining. So I'm really curious how this milk one comes out. I'm excited to see that. And actually, by the time we release this video, that'll be live. So we'll be able to share that at the end. Good. So that'll be really fun. But I'm thinking to myself, are you making sure that they're all flavored the same? Or are they all unsweetened?
Yeah, they'll all be unflavored, plain. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was like, you could totally mess with that, And
I'll try to get the same brand too, but I don't know.
Right. Funny. That's awesome. So cool. I love it. I love that, we can have these conversations and you bring such a great spotlight to, we're talking about taste, right? And we can't talk about taste to most of the world without acknowledging that our sense of smell is part of the experience, right? But that there is this ability, right? There's this ability to focus in on what we're experiencing on taste, that humans do have a sense of taste that provides a separate job, right? So if our sense of taste is there to help us detect nutrition and detect the nuances of nutrition, then we have to start bringing more awareness to it, right? And maybe everybody just needs to be holding their nose and experiencing things with a little bit less olfactory, because that's how you get, more intensity and more of a bland, what's the word? Not blandness, but
purity.
Purity. That's beautiful. See, we brought it back to pure taste, just like we were supposed to.
And I will say, for those of you out there who are holding up your hand and going, what about the jelly bean taste test? That is the most ridiculous taste test in the world.
I don't know
They're
what the jelly
asking you
bean
to
taste
take a
test is.
jelly belly, you know,
Uh-huh.
plug your nose, pinch it off, eat the jelly belly. I don't taste anything. And then take the plug off your nose. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's a raspberry jelly belly, whatever. That's so ridiculous because it's a synthetic food with a synthetic infused flavor, smell that has nothing to do with taste.
Right.
All you're doing is showing that
But
what
doesn't
flavor,
that prove it? Isn't what that whole idea is? Like, yeah, I would watch that and be like, well, that's just proving the fact that our sense of that flavor is completely coming from the sense of smell. Right.
But they are connecting it falsely to how you can't taste if your nose is plugged.
Oh, I see.
And I'm like,
I see. Feeding the narrative. Right.
Yeah.
Feeding the narrative where we need to step in and be like, oh, no. There is no taste here. All you're
So
getting.
that's why I do my taste tests with pure food, real food, whole food.
Right. Awesome. This has been phenomenal. I know I'm going to have you back on this show. There's probably going to be things that come in and I'm like, oh, we need Dia for this. We need Dia for this.
Yes, please.
Super excited. Thank you so much for being here, bringing your humor, your light, your wisdom, your taste buds. It's been great. I love it. Anything you want to add last minute? Any extra thoughts for any?
Explore your sense of taste, man. Explore your sense of taste. Awesome. And don't think that my life is less than, because it's not.
No. Woohoo! Whoop, whoop. Thank you, Dia.
My pleasure.